In this episode, we're finally getting answers, or at least partial answers, to Imogen's powers, her backstory, and the role that Ruidis is playing across this entire campaign. So without further ado, let's start uncovering Imogen and Ruidis' secrets. And of course, we begin in the house of Ruidis, the astronomist, and friend of the Loomis twins, the last person who saw them alive. And he begins to reveal to us some of the secrets of Ruidis. Now, I won't lie, I'm going to dance around a few things, a few connections in this video, but if you want to learn more, I suggest picking up Call of the Netherdeep. No spoilers here, but it does give a lot of context to some of the happenings with Ruidis. So, if you really want those secrets, pick up the book. One of the biggest things we find out though is that the Loomis twins were studying Ruidis-born. Now, these Ruidis-born people born under Ruidis' light are said to be special, or cursed really. They are fated to live at least interesting lives, but usually lives of suffering, and they bring suffering to others as well. But there have been many types of Ruidis-born, from, terrible kings to quote-unquote great heroes like Elixion. The Loomis twins also mentioned to Astani that these Ruidis-born had certain strange markings on their body that indicated that they were Ruidis-born. The same types of markings that Imogen has. But we'll get to all that later. The party also discovers that the Omen Archive in Eos is specifically tasked with finding out more about Ruidis-born. And because of this, it looks like we're going to have a trip to Eos in a Shenandoah in the future, at least to find out more about Ruidis-born and perhaps Imogen and her whole family. Astani also gave some disturbing implications about Ruidis and its power, because Ruidis rising aligns with these certain magical energies. Certain rituals can only be done when Ruidis is at full strength, when it is fully risen. Astani also makes mention to something that definitely perked my interest, that Ruidis is thought almost to be a gate between worlds. I mean, when I heard that, I thought, a gate between what? Ruidis as a gate is now making more and more sense. Now that gate to where is still partially unknown, although I think I have a guess that we'll talk about later in this episode. But it is coinciding with the plans of Ira, the Nightmare King, and the whole pattern that he is producing. So it makes sense that when Ruidis reaches its zenith and when it is at its full strength, that some ritual will happen, and Matt has been hinting towards this for a long time. And I think I mentioned a few episodes ago that it looked like episode 25, 26 is when we were going to be getting something along these lines. And I think that prediction is looking more and more accurate. Something is happening with Ruidis, and it is happening soon. But Astani suggests that they look through his arcane telescope at night so that they can get a better picture of Ruidis. The party agrees, and then hijinks ensue. As Astani goes for a walk with them, trying to show them the last place the Loomis twins were, and then they go into a fountain that probably connects to the elemental plane of water. There are then ludicrous amounts of shopping shenanigans. Matt somehow jump scares the party with the jack-in-the-box, which is really impressive. Like, honestly, it's a jack-in-the-box. How was he even supposed to do that? But yet, Matt did it. So that's just another point in the Matt Mercer is a great DM column. And finally, in this little section, we also have to mention how Imogen buys Laudna a gift. This creepy little doll, which is so on brand. And later on in this episode, Laudna names the doll Sashimi, and her and Pate, I think, are in a relationship now, which is an interesting choice, but we don't have time to unpack that situation this episode. Instead, we need to talk about what the party saw in Astani's telescope. And this revelation almost did not happen because the party was rolling really poorly on their perception checks when they were looking through the telescope. But in the end, it was Aurum who came through and showed Imogen a clearer picture of Ruidis. And on the surface of Ruidis, there are red storms. The red storms that Imogen has been seeing in her visions are connected directly to Ruidis. This is lending more and more credence to the idea that Ruidis is connected to some dark power, or group of powers. At the very least, it is probably a gateway to another plane or another world. There is also more talk in this scene about the relationship between Imogen and her father, as it appears like the only way that we're going to get more answers to what Imogen's past was really like or some information about her mother is from Imogen's father. However, that relationship is obviously frayed, and we knew that since the Hubot Corsairs when Imogen offered up her father. But it feels like there's something more. Why does Imogen's father hate her, or does he really hate her? Now, Imogen brings up the fact that he doesn't like his mind being read. Could perhaps Imogen have found something in his mind that made her react this way? Whatever the case, there is definitely more layers to that relationship. But he probably won't be the next location. If I had to guess, the party is probably going to head to Eos next after stopping by Drusar, and the group will probably be looking for Professor Khadija Sumal. But really, it feels like all the Ruidis plot threads are being tied in to Eos. And finally, we get one last tidbit of information from this entire scene, which is that Imogen's dreams appear to come in cycles. A 6-month cycle that appears to correlate with Ruidis' ascending. We also learned that the dreams will start becoming more and more frequent. So these dark powers will probably start having more influence over Imogen. But what are these dark powers? Well, now we're starting to get into that. Firstly, as everyone's taking watch, Fern notices that Imogen is holding the purple stone while she is sleeping. This is pointing to the fact that she is being corrupted by the stone. And just looking at the wonderful acting display that Laura Bailey put on in this session alone, I am without a doubt confident that Matt is talking to Laura behind the scenes, and the corruption is playing out without the audience's knowledge or the other players' knowledge. And then it goes from bad to worse as Imogen dreams of the Red Storm that night. But instead of running, Imogen runs into the storm, which is an absolutely heart-wrenching scene. And Laura Bailey has really set up this moment. We understand why Imogen is at her breaking point and why she just can't run anymore. The events of the adventure, heck, the events of the previous day have been weighing down on her. And so she defies her mother and runs into the storm. And inside the storm, she sees a shape of a woman. Although it is later revealed that this is not her mother. And then the figure of 1 becomes 3, and then becomes 5. And 8, and first Matt just stops at 8, and later he says 10. And my first thought after this is, god damn, it really sounds like the Psalm Novum. The Eyes of 9 plus 1 plus Lucian. Now I know that King exists and that he is alive, but is that only a part of Lucian? Did the rest of him go somewhere? I don't know, but it's without a doubt, I think, that this is somehow connected to Aori and magic. So, we have to think about it like this. Imogen is connected to Ruidis. Ruidis is probably connected to something that Aor was doing. Most likely some kind of corruption, which also then relates to what Ira the Nightmare King is doing in Drusar. So the question is, does this energy stop at the Nightmare King? Does it stop at the Psalm Novum? Or does it go higher? Is Ruidis the entity itself? Or is it something greater? Like Tharizdun, or maybe even a different primordial force from another dimension? Because Ruidis, as Astani has said, is the gate between worlds. What if there is something from another world, another dimension, that is trying to come in to Exandria? And it is using Ruidis, it's using Ira, it's using everybody to try to further that end. Perhaps that was the end goal of the Psalm Novum. Maybe there needed to be 10 individuals in order to do this. Who knows? But I definitely think that there needs to be many individuals to accomplish whatever this entity, whatever this force is trying to do. And you know what? At this point, I'd bet my right arm that eventually someone in the Mighty Nine will be contacted about their expedition to Aor. Because it feels like Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 are setups for this campaign. Now, after Imogen wakes up, there's a touching moment of friendship as she is comforted, but we also learn that the markings on Imogen's skin have grown. And they've been growing for years now, and this event almost 100% confirms that Imogen is Ruidis born, or at least touched by Ruidis in some way. However, after this, the party gets ready for their heist the next day. They go and they see Yvonne Hydroga and the rival party led by Hutchin. Now, we predicted this, and it's no surprise. The entire cast knew that that was going to be their rivals as well. They are called The Verdict, which is a really good name. And afterwards, Yvonne Hydroga gives them the task to retrieve Wind Folly, a lapis earring that was possessed by a djinn long ago. It is located in a part of the museum called the Vault, and essentially it is a race between both parties to see who can get the earring first. And that is where the episode ended, as now both parties, Bells, Hells, and The Verdict, are going into the museum and trying to get this earring. But Ruidis looms overhead, and despite next episode basically being a heist, that constant feeling of Ruidis hanging overhead and the corruption leaking into the landscape, I feel like is always there. Who do you guys think those shadows were? What could be the end goal with Ruidis? Now, if you're looking for some more content before the next episode of Critical Role, check out this video right here, and thank you for entering the dungeon.